And we're live. Welcome again to Everything is Attitude. I'm not sure what number show this is, Rosemary. We're getting close to 10. I feel like we should have a celebration
Do you
at
think?
some point. We
Do
have
you
to we
think?
have to check how many we've done, right? And have a
Champagne sounds good.
sure.
Uh,
I don't drink, but I'll do like the apple juice with the
we
bubbles.
can do a fake champagne. We can
Yeah,
do
exactly. No
we
one
can
will
do
know.
mimosas,
No one will know online, right? It'll look
orange juice, and some non-alcoholic wine, a spritz wine. How
sure.
about that? That
Sure.
sound good?
Sure. That sounds great. Welcome, Rosemary.
Hello, hi everybody. Are you sure we're live, Al? We don't look
We
live.
are. We just had our first hello from Rosie.
Oh, good. Hi, Rosie. Hello everybody, and welcome again to what is it?
Everything is
Everything is
attitude.
attitude. Everything is attitude, and it's just Al and I. I hope you're not disappointing you all out there, but it's Al and I. But I have a couple of stories to tell. Actually, it's really one story, but it's the part one, and then it's the part two, and it ties in part two somewhat ties in with what we were talking about last week, Al, which is about helping, reaching out to people, giving a helping hand where you can, and so on and so forth. Now, I just have to tell all of you out there listening that I text Alan and said I've got a story, part one and part two, for tonight. And so he called me later and he said, "What is it? What's the story? Tell me what the story is." And I said, "No, you're just going to have to wait like everybody else."
And she
And
knows I have so much patience that I always am willing to wait, right?
but before we get into that, Al, how is your week?
My week is going wonderfully, actually. Really good
Really?
week. Yes. Yeah.
You had a really good week?
I did. Yes.
Anything positive to tell us or anything?
I think we're really settling in, and the kids enjoyed going back to New York and coming back. It's always nice to get a break and come back and realize sort of what you have here in this new area in Colorado since we moved to New York, and appreciate it. New appreciation of it, I think, of the weather and the views and all that stuff.
Do you think that the kids see where you are as home now because they've grown up in Long Island, they've grown up in the sort of with that New York vibe? Do you think that they now, because Colorado is so different from where you were, do you think they see it as home? What do you think?
I think each time we've gone back to New York a couple times, and I've had this discussion with the kids. Um, it gets less and less nostalgic each time we go back. So the first time we went back, we really wanted to see the old house. We didn't even go to see the old house this time. So
Really?
I think it's
And Joe Rella lives in your old house,
he
right?
does. Yes, he
Yeah.
does exactly.
We had Joe Rella on our show a few weeks ago.
Yeah, one of our best shows with Joe.
Yeah,
Yeah, really, really great. He was. Everybody's great, but he was really wonderful, Joe.
yeah, yeah.
So I think yes, they're starting to, if not everyone, they're starting to kind of feel like this. I know I do. This is we wanted to get back. We enjoyed New York, but we really wanted to get back here. And there's confusion. What because the first few months you're in a new place, you call the old place home, and now we're starting to automatically call this place home. So you know that that transition is almost complete.
How old are your children, to remind everybody?
So my oldest, Lucas, is 15. Justin is 12, almost 13. He'll be 13 next week. And Kira is 10. She'll be 11 January 2nd. So
And we met Kira last
yes,
week.
we did. Exactly. Yes, we
And
did.
we've had some great comments, some really fun comments about the kids, about Kira, and about my darling boy Reese. So we've had some really great comments and how cute they were and so on. To my knowledge, I don't think Reese has watched himself yet on that show. But when I get to New York, which is I'm going for Christmas, when I get to New York, we're going to sit and snuggle up and have some hot chocolates and watch all the shows, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that. So, would you like to hear my stories,
I would. Yeah.
or story part one and part two, actually?
Yes, I would.
Um, because what I thought was these stories do reflect attitude. And so I thought they would really fit in well with tonight. And they literally did happen today. So it's not as if I've had to drag my memory for anything. So I'm going to start with, I'll do part one and we can talk about that. And then I'll do part two and we can definitely then talk about that. All right. So part one. All right. I got up this morning and I needed to go to the bank. And I needed to go to a bank that I've actually not been to before. And although I I bank at another branch, I decided that I had such an awful experience with the other bank. Talk about attitude, really horrible, negative attitude, awful attitudes. I thought I'm never going to go there again. You know how that is. I can't be doing with people who make you feel like they're doing you a big favor. So I went to this new bank. I'd never gone there before, and uh, I did my business. I waited at the teller's window, and then I needed to see one of the bankers there because I had some other business to do, and I'd never met this guy before. I can't mention the name of the bank. And I certainly can't mention this banker's name because it's such a fantastic name, and I wish I could mention his name, but I can't. But anyway, for privacy's sake, so I saw this sort of young man sit, he came out to meet me, shook my hands, took me into his office, and then we've had this huge desk between us, great big giant desk between us, and sort of he's sitting there in his suit and tie, as you can imagine bankers are, and I'm sitting there, and I'm a friendly person, and I'm smiling and saying how are you, and he's going through all of my details and asking questions and so on and so forth, because we had another transaction to do. And at some point, he's telling me how he came to Florida and that he was from New Jersey, and on this went. And we're just sitting there chatting and laughing and having a nice time while he's fiddling on his computer. And you know how you're having a conversation, but they're fiddling away at different things. And at some point, he said to me, "So then, Rosemary, what do you do?" And I love it when people ask me, although sometimes I'm a little cautious because you never know how somebody's going to take it. So I said, then he said, "Don't tell me, let me guess," which I thought was not so bright because I'm thinking, but maybe he will guess. So he made a few guesses, and I said, "You're never going to get it." And he said, well, you know, I said, "Well, do you remember the movie The Sixth Sense with, I can't remember the name of the guy now, but I love him to pieces. The movie star.
Bruce
Anyway,
Willis. Is it Bruce Willis?
Bruce
Yeah.
Willis, exactly. And I said, there's a scene in that movie where this kid says, "I see dead people." So I said, "So that's me." And he looked at me and his eyes went wide a bit. And he said, "Are you saying you see ghosts?" And I said, "No, I actually don't consider people in the spirit world ghosts. I consider them people because they're, he said, so what do you see then? Do you see auras?" And he sort of stopped typing for a little bit and he's sort of looking at me now. He said, "What do you see then? Do you see auras?" I said, No, I see people." So he looked at me. He asked me a couple more questions. We talked a little bit more about it. And then, of course, he said to me, "So then, what do you see around me?" So you know that somebody's open when they do that. But I don't think he expected quite the shock that he got. Now, remember, I'm in a bank. This is about money. This is a professional meeting. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, just remember that you asked me." Because I never actually will push myself onto anyone. If you ask me, I might do something. Not always, but I might do something. But if you don't ask me, I'm not going to come forward. But as he'd asked me, "What do you see around me?" I saw this man who died of cancer, etc., etc., and I described him a little bit. And he sort of, now he's typing again, and he sort of keeps looking up at me and back to his typing, and he's like, not, I mean, anybody can say there's a man standing next to you who had died of cancer or had a heart attack or whatever it is. Anybody can say that sort of thing, right? So I said, so he says, oh, well, I do know someone who died of cancer. Well, we all do, don't we? So I said, yes, but he's talking to me about a new motorbike. Now, he's a banker. You think Ferrari, you think car of some kind, nice car or something. I certainly didn't think motorbike. I mean, why would you? But I said, he's talking about you know, getting a new motorbike. And he couldn't help himself. He just popped out. He said, well, I haven't got it yet. So I know I was on the right track, right? So I said, no, but you're thinking about it, maybe even looking for one. I said, but he's talking about this motorbike. So he looked at me and he said, well, what else does he say then? So I said, well, he's telling me that you need to be really, really careful. I said, now, if I personally were advising you, I would say don't get a motorbike because I hate them. This guy isn't telling you that you shouldn't get a motorbike. He's just telling you to be really careful because of the accident with the last one. He's looking at me, and I said, now he's talking about dirt bikes. I said, I know you might think I'm crazy. He says, no, I don't. I said, well, he's talking about dirt bikes, and you know that sort of racing that you do with dirt bikes and so on and so forth. And I said, he's talking about this accident. He looked at me and he just was jaw dropped, and he said, well, a few years ago, I had a nasty accident and I was medevaced to the hospital. They came in a helicopter and pulled me out and took me to hospital. So I said, so you do see why this guy is saying just be careful on the bike then, right? Because of the accident that you had. And he was still processing it as I was saying, well, thank you very much, and and I'll see you later. And I said, on my way out, we did finish our business, but you could see it was like he was trying to be a businessman, but he was also trying to assess how on earth did she know, number one, that I'm thinking about getting a motorbike, not a car, not a truck, nothing. How did she know I was trying to get a motorbike? How did she know about the accident? And how did she know about the guy with cancer who was either his father or his grandfather? We never quite got to that part of it because, as I say, we were there on business and I did need to have some stuff done. And the poor guy just walked out and he had other clients coming in because we'd spent so long talking. The other clients were waiting and he had to get up and see to the other clients who had an appointment, and I hadn't had an appointment. So I just walked out of the bank and I said before I left, by the way, the guy next to you just wants me to tell you he loves you very much. And off I went. Now, that's the first part of the story. Now, it sounds weird, but to me, that is my life. And it happens all the time. If I go into a restaurant, if I go to a bar, if I go in the shopping mall, wherever I am, if I start talking to people, I see things. You know me, Al. You've been with me when it's happened. But it made me laugh, and I started to think about it because his attitude was very open. At the same time, the more I said to him, you could see the more he was trying to puzzle it out, but at the same time stay very professional, because outside of his office, which was all glass, by the way, everybody in the bank, the tellers, the other people who worked there, could see in, and they could see us having this extremely lengthy conversation, and it had nothing to do with banking whatsoever. So I want your opinion on, my opinion is if you stay open, anything can happen to you. Right. What do you think?
Oh, well, first of all, I love the story, and I love that he was. I don't know that he was. It seemed like he was open to it, or almost like he was saying, "Okay, what have you got at the beginning?"
Well,
And
he
then,
was open to it in that he did say what you see around
yeah, he
me.
was right. But
Yeah.
I think we always talk about the probability of things, and I think he probably was like, "Let's see what you got at first," and then he started getting more and more
And then he
specific,
knew what I got.
right? And but
Yeah.
once you start getting, if you hit one thing, I think people are like, "Oh, like you said, anybody can get that," but then you start hitting specific things along the
Well,
way.
I'm going to stop you. I don't hit anything.
Yeah,
I'm relaying a
I
conversation
know, I know.
happening.
You're right. Sorry. So
Right.
as you're relaying this information, it's confirmed, it's accurate, but it's confirmed as accurate in whoever you're speaking to. Uh, it's amazing to see the transition,
Yeah.
but that won't happen if they were not open. If he was not open to it in the beginning, I think you could make excuses at any juncture, right? Like you could say,
Well,
everybody knows that, and then just stop listening, essentially, right?
well, it would be very tough for anyone. Of course, people are going to say it, or they're going to say I'm lying, or whatever. It would be very tough for anybody to be able to actually explain how I can go into a bank, sit at a desk where there's a banker wearing a suit and tie, and I'm talking about the fact that he's first of all thinking getting a new bike, second of all that he's a dirt biker, that he races dirt bikes. I mean, the chances of that have got to be very slim. And
Yes.
anyone trying to figure that out, they're either going to say, well, she's lying, or she's whatever they come up with. The fact is that I left that one man in his office, having to deal with customers coming in after me, trying to hold on to his professional attitude, wanting to do a good job for the next clients, but you can guarantee that in his head he's buzzing around.
His
You know,
wheels are spinning, right?
how could she possibly know that? And what's going on. You could understand the confusion, but again, I think it's that I'm certain, because this is not an unusual event for me. This is something that happens. I don't think it's ever happened in a bank before. Actually, it might have once before when I think about it. But it's not an unusual thing for me to do. And so I'm always open, and I remain open to all possibilities, which is basically about having a very positive attitude, an attitude of being unafraid of what is out there, and also an attitude of I see an opportunity. The opportunity was not for me. I mean, I don't get anything out of it at all, except it's a great story. But the opportunity is not for me. The opportunity was that basically this guy in the spirit world saw me, and he was probably rubbing his hands together, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to finally get to talk to him," And those in the spirit world, if they remain open and they're willing, and the person who's sitting in front of me is also open and willing, things happen. You might, I'm talking to everybody out there who's listening. You might meet someone like me, and if you're open, even if you're skeptical, it doesn't matter. If you stay open and you say, well, what if she's right, what if there is a possibility of something like this happening, and if you remain open, and not just to people like me, but if you remain open to the shop assistant, if you remain open to the restaurant, the waitress, or whatever, and you're not judging, you're just staying open to the opportunities that come to you. So I thought that I basically gave this man, this banker, a huge gift, because at some point I did say to him, look, he just wants you to know that he knows. He just wants you to know that he sees you, that he's with you, and that he's trying his best to guide you in whatever way you can. Now, there was one final comment that this father or grandfather, or whoever it was, uh, gave to this man, and he, was talking about the personal aspects about him and his wife, and I said, he tells me that there's a little bit of, uncertainty going on from time to time within this personal area. So he just simply wants me to ask you a question. And it's amazing because this question I've asked so many people in the last couple of weeks. This one question. It's a shame I have to ask it, but nevertheless, I said he wants me to ask you, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And he laughed. He said, no, I'd rather be right, which tells you his personality, it tells you his character, and it tells you why he's being asked that question in the first place. Because he's a very competitive, positive guy. And of course, he wants to be right in his life. But I'm going to say to everybody out there listening, have an attitude of back off, be happy, stop pushing your point. Don't force yourself into wanting to be right all the time. You know what I'm saying, Al?
I do. Yeah.
Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And anyone out there who's saying, well, I'd actually rather be right, let me tell you, you stand no chance of being happy because your attitude stinks.
And Rosemary, the thing is too, when you in those situations when you really get yourself going and you make sure that you're right and you want to be right, you end up either arguing or
Yeah,
screaming or whatever it is, and the next day or two or three, you don't even remember what you were trying to be right about, but you sure as heck do remember how frustrated and annoyed or aggravated you were because that lasts much longer than what the heck you were arguing or discussing in the first place.
that's right. That's right. I mean, I know people. I know, I'm thinking of one particular person, fortunately not in my life, but unfortunately very close to someone who is very close to me. And he will not be wrong. And consequently, everybody's miserable, including him. If you have this attitude of, even when you know you're wrong, you're not going to say you're wrong, because for whatever reason, people either feel ashamed or they feel inadequate or they feel, particularly sensitive. They can't bear to be wrong because maybe when they were kids, they were made to feel wrong all the time, or maybe they just. I think somebody who wants to be right all the time is somebody who has serious insecurity issues.
And it causes a disconnect too, right, Rosemary? Like if you are someone that always has to be right, and it's with your family, your spouse, your friends, eventually people will just say, I'm not even going there. I'm not going to have a conversation. You're not going to have depth in conversations, right? You're not going
Right.
to connect with people because they're just going to disconnect and be like, all right, you're right. I'm done, and move on, right?
What I tend to do in those circumstances, although I do give up eventually if somebody just keeps going, I won't tell somebody that I think they're wrong. I will say, well, you may be right and you may have a point. However, this is my opinion.
We'll agree to disagree, right?
But you may be right and I may be wrong, because I have no issue with being wrong. I have no issue. If I'm wrong, I'm the first to say, whoops, I really mucked up. And I think that if more of us could just, understand that it's okay if you're wrong, about the big things in life, just if you're wrong, you're wrong. And nobody, it's not the end of the world if you're wrong. So I always say to people in these situations, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Would you like to hear the second part of my story?
I would.
this was a really eventful day for me today, because I only meant to go out for an hour and be back home and doing other things. So I was in the bank for 2 hours at least, and one way or another. So I come out of the bank and my car is parked right in front of the door. So I open the doors, I click the key to the. You have no idea what's coming now. I click the key and open unlock my car. And as I'm heading, just a few steps really off of the pavement down onto the curb, I noticed that the car next to me, there was a car parked next to me with two ladies in it. And the lady next to the window was down on the car next to me, and there was a lady in the car, and she had her head in her hands and she had her head down like this. And again, being open and being aware, trying to be aware, I looked at her and I knew that there was such an air of despondency, and she was crying. So I go to the car, I open the car door, I throw my bags in, and she's just sort of sitting there with her head in her hands, and she's sobbing. So I partially close my car door, and I go to the window of this car. Now, most people would leave it alone, would just get in the car, drive off. But I couldn't. I just simply couldn't. Call me nosy, call me interfering, whatever it is, I couldn't do it. So I popped my head in very gently and carefully. I reached for this lady's hand, and she sort of looked up at me, and she was startled, and tears down her face. And the woman in the driver's seat was sort of wondering what on earth was going on, I'm pretty sure. They probably both did. And I held this lady's hand, and I said to her in the most gentle voice I could conjure here, because I knew that she was in severe trouble. And I said to her, "Are you all right? Is there anything I can do to help you?" And she sort of put her head down, and the woman in the driver's seat started telling me she's not well, she's on medication, blah, blah, blah. And I just was looking at this woman, I was looking into her eyes, and I said, "Well, I'm a healer, and I'm trying to give you some healing. And I know that there are people who think you're crazy, right?" And the woman in the driver's seat said to me, "Well, she's schizophrenic." So I started to talk to her about my grandmother, who was a voluntary patient in a psychiatric hospital in England where I was born. And I said, people thought she was crazy, but she wasn't really. She was just different. I think you're just different. And she started to smile. And all the time I'm holding her hand and I'm stroking her hand. And I said to her, "I think you're just different, but I think you're very special." And I said, "I don't think you're as crazy as people think you are. And she smiled at me, and she sort of, her whole energy began to change. Now I was very careful, because you cannot give false hope to people, but at the same time, you have to give them some little bit of hope, and you have to let people see, and I try to let her see that, yes, I'm a stranger on the street, but I care. And in that moment that we have, I care about you. And I said, "Now I think you've got your angels all around you, and I think they're trying to help you." And all the time you could see this depression lifting off her shoulders a little bit, and you could see her start to smile. So she went from completely and utterly despairing to being lifted and being held up a little bit. And the woman in the driver's seat, when I said, again, I said, I'm a healer, and as I'm talking to you, I'm holding your hands and I'm giving you some lovely healing. Do you feel a little bit better? And she nodded and she said, I do. And the woman in the driver's seat said to me, you're a healer? Oh my God, we need you. And my daughter and my family and this and so on. And we ended up with this incredible conversation. And I did something that I don't usually do. I gave them my phone number because she said, can we come and see you? Do you take people to the house? Can we come and see you? And we lived in California and we saw a healer there, but since we've been here, we haven't been able to find anyone, and so on and so forth. So it's almost as if I was guided to them because they need, again, if we remain open and, and they're going to get a huge shock because I don't charge for healing ever. I've never charged for healing. So I know that she's going to call me and they're going to ask me how much it's going to cost, and I'm going to say nothing, because I feel I made enough money through my books mainly, and through different things, workshops and so on. And I think that even though I'm not making that same money now, I still think that when you have a gift, I've got to pay my bills like everybody else. So I have to earn money in the one way. But at the same time, I feel with all of us, no matter what it is you do, again, it's this attitude of mind that I have, that really I try to inspire people that no matter what you've got, even if it's a little, you can afford to give a little to someone else. And it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. If you give of your heart, you give of your soul, you give of your energy, just give of your time for a little bit. And this is, again, it sort of goes back to what we were talking about last week, and how we were talking about giving and reaching out and so on. And so when I left these two ladies, this lady who had been absolutely desperate and sobbing into her hands and so depressed and so unhappy, she was smiling. And the woman sitting in the driver's seat was relieved because she had the responsibility of this person, and now there's someone else she can talk to share a little bit of that responsibility with from time to time. Basically, it was just looking at these two lovely women and sharing my energy and my love with them, which didn't cost me a thing. Didn't cost me anything, and furthermore it didn't cost them anything either. And I just feel if we all had that attitude of gentleness and kindness, and Great Eagle says your world needs gentleness, and if we can just portray that gentleness and don't be afraid to hold a stranger's hand. If I'd have gone to that car and been afraid, or said to myself, well, I'd like to help but I better not, or I'm interfering or whatever, they wouldn't have gotten that gift, because again, they had a gift. So if she'd have rejected me, if they'd have screamed at me and told me to go away, I would have happily gone away. I'd have said, okay, but I just want you to know that I care anyway. So I was open to that and they were open to that. And I think it's really, if we could all only just be unafraid of what will happen if we reach out to someone, even if we don't know them, what will happen? It could be something really awful, but mostly it's something really beautiful and it's really great. But we have to have that attitude of being open and willing to take the rejection if it actually comes to you. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I love that, as you said, something about being open. I was thinking the same thing. Being open to what can happen to you is one part of it, but opening up yourself to others and what that may entail for them is a big part of it too. And if both sides are open to whatever it is, that's when you connect. That's when the positive things can happen. That's when you get this. The kindness and the gentleness really come into play, right? When both you're open to those things out there, and you leave yourself open to possibilities.
I
Um,
think that for people who, you know, are they're out there and they so want to give, they're afraid. And they're afraid of being rejected. I remember many years ago, I was in a pub in England. That's we always use. You could always find me in a pub in England. After our healing nights, we'd all get together and go and have a drink in a pub. And someone there was really rude to me and really obnoxious to me. And rather than get into a, back and forth, I waited for a few moments, then quietly said, "Well, I'm off." But um, what upset me the most was not that someone had a go at me, but that people I loved and worked with, my healers, my team, my group, nobody defended me. Not one person said to this other person, don't talk to her that way. Not one person defended me. I went home, and I have to say, I went home crying because I was so disappointed with the people that I thought I'd taught them, let's say, better. And I got home, and about a half an hour later, a knock came at the door. Now it was by this time it was about 11:30 at night. A knock came at the door, and two of my students, a married couple, two of my students said, "We just want to check that you're okay." Now, even though they hadn't defended me, at least they'd come to check on me. We became really fast friends because those people stepped out of their comfort zone. They didn't know me very well at that time, but they stepped out of their comfort zone to just come and make sure that I was okay. They reached out to me. They didn't know if I was going to slam the door in the face or say, "I'm fine, thank you very much," and send them away. They didn't know. Now, there was another couple who I'd known much longer, who also, nobody, as I say, nobody defended me. And they told me later, we would, about the other week and what happened in the pub and so on and so forth. Well, we sat in the car discussing it. And we sat in the car wondering whether we should come and see you or call you or check on you. And we went back and forth and we didn't know what to do. So because they didn't know what to do, they did nothing. And it's not that they weren't caring people, it was that they were, again, I think it's the fear of rejection, of being rejected. But when you are open and you stay open and you try to, always be open to doing the right thing whenever possible, or always being able to step forward and do what is the right thing to do. I think it's a really scary thing. I get it. It's a really scary thing. But if you remain open to that, then please step forward, hold someone's hand, put your arm around a stranger if you see somebody upset. If they scream and yell at you or tell you to get away, it's okay. It's okay. Don't take it personally. Again, it's about attitude, and I think that people are so so frightened of doing that or so nervous about doing that. They I get it. They're afraid of rejection, and that stems from probably their childhood or the way they were treated as children or the way the spouse treats them, and it sort of reflects their they're sensitive, but their insecurities. It reflects people's insecurities when they don't step forward in the moment to do something. um I was brought up, I was extremely insecure for years and years, but I'm not insecure now, and it's my faith that makes me secure, and it's my knowledge of, so it doesn't matter if somebody rejects me, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to let that stop me from reaching out.
well, there's vulnerability in it, right, Rosemary? You're when you open yourself to
Yeah,
things, you leave yourself vulnerable, and that's scary to a lot of
Well,
people.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is, Al.
And but with that, like if you look at it as being vulnerable, I think that's maybe more of a negative attitude. If you look at it as I open myself up and some great possibilities, some great things can happen, that's more on the positive attitude. So if we're looking for sort of this recipe that we always do, right?
Oh,
to,
yes, go
to
ahead.
be open to possibilities, the theme of your stories and your experiences that you just explained. So what is our recipe for everyone out there that wants to be open but maybe is fearful of that, that wants to be open to new things but also open themselves up to others, and be able to connect and interact with people that they may not normally do on an everyday basis.
Well, if I was making this cake, we'll say, if I was producing this recipe, I think I'd start with a little dose of courage. How do you acquire it? You just sometimes you just have to dare to be and to be unafraid. I always say to people, if you step into the void, it's rare that you're going to crash on the rocks below. Someone's always going to be there to catch you. So I think in order to to help people to be more open, I think it requires a sprinkling of, I would say, spice in the way of courage. So it,
Rosemary, and if I think back to when we first started this show, I think I was a little nervous, probably more nervous than you. I don't think you were
I
nervous.
wasn't nervous at
Yeah,
all.
I don't think you were,
No.
but we were. It took a little bit of courage for me to do it, and it's worked out just fine. But I was inspired by your courage, and I fed off of that courage as well.
Yeah, I
But
was going to say, what was it? How did you to sort of achieve that courageous spark that made you do this?
I think it honestly started from when I moved out to Colorado from New York, and I had a lot of growth with that. I
Yeah.
had tried some other video things. A friend of mine, Mike, that I do another video series in the educational space. One day he said to me, we had talked about doing video, and he said, "Let's just do it right now." And I was like, "Wait, what? What do you mean right now?" And we did it right then, and it was nerve wracking, but it worked out okay.
Well, again, let's see what else we can put in that pot that we're stirring. Then, little courage, spontaneity, being able to be spontaneous, being able to live in the moment, despite what can happen. Just for instance, I'm sitting behind the desk and I'm going to be spontaneous because there's this guy is talking to me, and this guy said, so tell me what you can see. So I did this. Yes, I do this all the time. So maybe not quite so spontaneous, but it is spontaneous in the moment. You take a chance because I might have to go back into that bank again. They'll all, I have to take the risk of, are they going to think I'm loony? Here she comes, or am I going to, you know, be a little bit more understood? Is he going to appreciate the gift, or is he going to just throw it back in my face?
Mhm.
And certainly going to these ladies, I actually, to be honest, didn't even think about it. So being spontaneous, understanding what it is, I think you have to sit down. So we've got courage, we've got spontaneity, and we've got an overwhelming sense of love.
Mm.
Stir all those things together, and then sit down and just, if you can, just write down a list of, the kind of person you want to be. I want to be the kind of person, if I see someone in trouble, I'm going to help them. If I see someone who's upset, I'm going to put my arm around them. I mean, we asked the kids last week at Thanksgiving, uh, and I said, what would they do if they came across someone who was homeless and didn't have any friends and so on? And Reese, 5 years old, out of the mouths of babes, 5 years old, he said, don't exactly remember the exact words, but Are you all right? And how can I help you? So that phrase goes into the pot. Are you all right? And how can I help you? And that's exactly what I did. It just occurred to me that that is exactly what I said to this lovely lady sitting in the car who, was so, I just took her hands and she was looked at me. She probably thought I was crazy than everybody tells her she is. But it's okay. Don't be afraid. So are you all right? Is there anything I can do to help you? And, you know, the passenger in the car said well, the driver, she was actually the driver in the car, said, oh, it's, well, she's sick, it's all right, she's sick. I could have left it there. And I chose, because my soul so recognized the pain in this woman, and I just had to give her something. So the love and the kindness. So we mix all those things together, and what a great cake we make, right? So I think that having that courage, being able to be spontaneous, to do something without thinking, should I or shouldn't I, or will I? Well, if I do this, and if I do that, sometimes.
Rosemary, I would just add though, safety first with any of these things.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because
yeah.
that was going to be right out of my mouth the next time around. Of course, you don't. You don't do it in a place where somebody could harm you. You certainly don't approach a man the same way that you necessarily would approach a woman. That doesn't mean that women aren't violent, because they can be. And yes, and of course, you have to pay attention. I wouldn't recommend anyone to sort of, I mean, I didn't get in the car, for instance. I certainly didn't get in the car. I gave my phone number, but that doesn't mean they'll ever find out where I live. I rarely give out my phone number anyway, but certainly safety first. But still, you can, if people want to try this out, go to your local hospital, go to the hospice, go where there are professional people who can protect you. You're in a protected environment. You don't have to tackle someone on the street. And I'm not suggesting that people do that. Absolutely not. And you're absolutely right. But, so find a safe environment to practice this. Go to your local children's home. You know me, I'm big on kids. Go to your local children's home. Go to your local hospice. Go to a hospital, and go to the administration people, and you say to them, what do I do to volunteer? And they'll say, well, what can you do? Can you drive? Would you do this or that? Well, I would say, if I went into a hospital, well, actually, I can read. Is there anybody who maybe can't see very well? They'd like someone to read to them, because I would read to someone. So you can choose what it is. So sit down with your pad and your pencil and ask yourself, how would you like to develop this awareness, this being open, and so on. And when we do the courses, certainly through the lessons, I'm going to be saying to people, knock on a neighbor's door. If you know of a neighbor who's on their own, don't do that. So, part of the course, part of the lessons is to reach out to people who you wouldn't normally reach out to. We're so busy with our own lives, and to be fair to everybody out there, it's crazy. Life is crazy, and it gets to you. And, there's so much going on. And Al, with you've got 3 children and God knows how many jobs, and a wife to sit. You've got all that going on. How do you fit some small thing into that? But you can do that.
Rosemary, and it could be like you just said. It could be a children's hospital. It could be someone that you've heard, hey, they were going through something, a family member, a friend, and be open to just saying, hey, I'm here if you need me. Do you need to talk? I'm here. Give them a call, give them a text, similar to what we were talking about last week. And that, you could do with safety in mind, like we were talking to, because these people just in your circle could be could need that openness, that connection, to help them out.
And sometimes it's just time. I had a 96-year-old neighbor, and she used to love to ride in my car because I have a soft top, and I put the top down, and she loved to ride in that all over the place. But every other day or something, I would go to her and I said, "I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want anything?" Now, it was dreadful, really, because every time she'd always say yes. There'd always be something she wanted, not necessarily because she wanted it, but because she wanted me to come back, because she was desperate and she was alone and she was lonely. And I would go in and I would sometimes have to force myself to do it, because it's really hard sometimes to find that half an hour or an hour. And I always knew it would at least be that. So I would always time it so that I could give her that time if possible. There's a lady across the street who had cancer. I'd had barely spoken 2 words to her, but I went and knocked on the door, and I said, I just said, I don't want to come in, and I don't want to, be a nuisance. I just want you to know that if there's anything I can do for you at all, if I can get your groceries for you, if there's anything at all that I can do, just pop across and let me know. I mean, that's it. That's all you need to do. And again, you're right. If you're worried about the safety issue of a thing, there are your neighbours, schools where your kids go to, hospitals, hospices. There's so many different places that people could go to. And I'd love to hear people's stories. So if anybody's got some good stories to tell us, I'd love to hear those stories, because it always inspires me when I see people doing good stuff.
We have a couple of comments, Rosemary, to
Oh,
share
uh-oh, yes.
before we go. Karen, who we know, who we talked, she wasn't on the show. It was either the first or second episode, but we talked about her situation at work. If people remember, she's the bad news is that she's homesick, but the good news is that she was able to see the show live. So she was really
Actually, if I'd known she was at home and not at work, we'd have had her on the show, sick or
You just get a bad cold, exactly. Chris remembers stopping at a McDonald's with you, Kay, and Karen on your way home from Western New York, and you surprising a couple of young women at a table next to you. Um, Sharon, in regard
how
to
did I surprise them? I'm not sure.
uh,
I can't remember.
Sharon mentioned in reference to you and the man in the bank, you were both guided to being there and giving him the message it was meant to be.
Absolutely.
Christina, who was also on the show, my sister says, I choose happy. I love your conversations as usual. We have a couple of ciao, Rosemary, buonanotte, cara Rosemary. Um, we have one person that I cannot pronounce his name, but it's a really long, maybe the longest name I've ever seen. It's Ni Bagiz Okwe.
You didn't say it right, but anyways, but you tried.
I tried. I did it phonetically. That's the best I could do. Um, that they said that they're afraid to be open,
Oh,
and then
that's very sad.
yeah, and the ingredient, a dose of courage. Maybe lean on somebody that can
Yes,
push
exactly.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, have someone with you who's, I was with my friend Mary Lou a few months ago, actually, and we went to the McDonald's, and as we were, I always have the chicken tenders there, and we drove through, and as we drove through, uh, we saw a homeless man with one of those placards, I'm homeless, that sort of thing. And I never give people money ever like that. Maybe a couple of times, but anyway, but never really give money, because I don't want them to go and spend it on booze. But so Mary Lou said, "Oh, look at that! Look at that poor guy." I said, "Yeah." So we went to the window and bought an extra burger and fries and a drink. And as we came around, I I said, I handed it to him, and his eyes went as wide as saucers. And then the smile, and I said, here you go. I said, here, the burger and fries for you. Hope that's okay, and a drink. And you could see he was ecstatic. You could just see it in his face. He was absolutely thrilled. And so, yes, you could argue, well, I have that extra money, but I would actually rather have bought that for him and shared something with Mary Lou in that moment than not give him something. So he had a burger and fries, and we never saw him again. He sort of disappeared. He ran off with them. I'm hoping either to share with his family or to sit in a park somewhere and have a nice meal, whatever. And I've never seen him again. I sent out a lot of healing energy and send out all my prayers and everything to help him, and keep my fingers crossed that one small act of kindness. It's like you throw a pebble in the pond and the ripples go out.
Yes.
But what I say to people, which people don't get, then ripples not only go out, they go deep. As that pebble is going down into the pond, the pebble goes deep, deep, deep down, and the ripples are there. You don't see them. You don't see what's happening, but the ripples are going out. And I hope that one small act of kindness from a stranger encourages that stranger when they're better off or when they're less needed. They'll give that act of kindness to somebody else.
Excellent, excellent. So, last two comments, and then I think we're close to closing.
We are.
Karen says, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of fear as being one of the biggest parts of this, but also I wonder about being aware of trusting your instincts. Because I've seen Rosemary many times when we're shopping, stopping to take the time to show appreciation for the cashier, which is so lovely to see her recognize them when everyone is passing them by quickly. Chris clarified, she said Rosemary gave the young women a message from a relative and they were shocked, but knew it to be true.
It happens everywhere I go.
Niba Gizokwe said good, so maybe I was close to the right name, but also
We hope so, right? We hope so.
also said I'm still learning to be open or have the courage to be open. And we hope that what we've talked about here and the stories you've shared, Rosemary, can help in that regard for whoever is going to watch this or is listening now, right?
Yeah, and I think that we should share more stories, from time to time on this Everything is Attitude, because it really does show that, we could be those kinds of people who we talk about a positive attitude, but we don't necessarily have one. You know what I'm saying? You
Yes.
talk about what's right, but you don't necessarily do what's right. So I'm trying to show people that it's okay not only to talk about what's right, but to also do what's right as well. All right. So, well, Al, my co-host, my lovely co-host here again. It is a goodbye, goodbye. You know that song? Wipe a tear, baby dear, from my eye. Do you know that song? So
No.
we're going to say goodbye, good night for now. We're also, just to clarify, if you would like to tell us your story, you don't have to come on if you don't want to, but we'd love to have you on. If you'd like to tell us your story, if you'd like to sort of have any comments for our Everything is Attitude, uh, info at everythingisattitude.com. If you would like to chat to Al or email Al for whatever reason, he's in the educational sphere here, but he's very smart, very sensitive and lovely. Al at alpisano.com, Pisano, alpisano.com. Or you can email moi, Rosemary, at rosemaryaltea.com. So, inundate us with your comments, inundate us with your thoughts. If you have a thought of a subject that you'd like us to talk about, fine. I did laugh because I invited somebody on the show a couple of weeks ago, and they said, I really desperately want to see you, and for whatever reason they couldn't have a consultation with me for whatever reason. And I thought, well, come on the show then, because I'll give you a one-on-one here. That's a really good way, right, to get our input and to get some real insights. So if you out there, if you're listening, it's a good way. Volunteer, email us again, info at everythingisattitude.com. Al's going to put it up there for everybody to see. In the meantime, thank you, Al. You've been great as usual. And in the meantime, thank you everybody out there for watching. We love your comments, and until we see you next week, we're going to be doing the Thursday show, which is a live chat show. If you want to join us on YouTube, or if you want to know any more, again, use those emails that we have. The cookbook is, I'm going to say the cookbook is out. If anybody wants to know more about that, yes, yay, my cookbook is out finally. It's taken me 3 years with this thing. And until I see you all again, have a very, very, and again, another very blessed day.